Firstly, Faye, how did you know you wanted to get into the sports media industry? When was that first kind of thought that you wanted to have a career in this area?
So I always absolutely loved watching sport. Like I enjoyed playing it, but I was never that good. So I was never going to have a career like as an athlete or as a player. And I can remember when I was about 14, 15, going to see my careers advisor at school and saying, I really want to work in football. And my dream was to be the England men's manager, which kind of now I'm a little bit further on, a little bit older. It was never going to happen. But he said to me, "Oh, I've got a friend who works at the local paper in the sports desk. Why don't you go and spend a week there?" So I went along to the Eastbourne Herald and did a week there, which was kind of rewriting bowls reports. We went to a non-league game, and I was like, "Oh yeah, like this is quite good." So I went off and did my degree in philosophy at Southampton, and I did a postgraduate course a year after at Cardiff, all with the aim of going into sport because I knew that I would always enjoy a career and it would never feel like work if I was watching sports. And then when I finished uni, it was like 2007, 2008, and there weren't loads of jobs around because the country was in a financial crisis. And I got offered a job in news on work experience during my course. And it wasn't my dream job, but at the time, it was a job on a daily paper. And quite a few people had said to me, go and do a few years in news, you'll get your grounding in everything and you'll be a better journalist to then go into sport. So that's what I did. And actually, I love news and I spent pretty much 10 years in news, which I never expected to do. But like covering court cases and like going to big events and stuff was brilliant.
So would you say that kind of molded you into the journalist you are now?
Definitely. I think now I'm covering sport because news is so complex and there's so many different topics that you have to cover. And most news stories, you only find out about them on the day. So you might be covering like an environmental story one day, politics the next day, health the next day. So in comparison, now I'm mainly working in football. It is so simple because the game like plays it out in front of you. The story is there. You don't have to actually go out and find the story. And the great thing is that the players and managers all have to speak to you because it's part of their job. So you're not knocking on doors. Like I used to have to do death knocks when you'd literally go and find someone whose relative had died, look them up in the like phone book, go and knock at their door. And generally they would say, yeah, come in and we'll do a tribute. But it was really character building, I think. So I think now if I have to approach a player or a manager or something, I never get nervous because I'm like, I'm not approaching you because your son's just died in a terrible accident. It's a completely different scale. So, and all my like best stories of journalism are from my news days because I just so many like fun and amazing things happened.
So you mentioned how that wasn't the start you wanted in the career. You kind of took that job just to get your bearings. So when did you finally get your foot in the door in terms of sport?
So I worked at two different daily regional papers and worked my way up to working on like the news desk. And then I joined the BBC in 2012, just before the London 2012 Olympics. And through working on programmes, I got to do quite a lot of sport as well. So it wasn't my main job, but the one thing that put me off fully committing to sport was being contracted to work every weekend, which I think until you're doing it, it can be quite like a lonely, hard thing being a sports journalist because you're missing out on like weddings, birthday parties, all of those things. And I was never really sure like I wanted to commit. So I did sort of bits and bobs of sport, and it was only after I had my children and then I got cancer when my kids were quite young. So I ended up having quite a few years, like 6 years out of working. And I remember watching the Euro just after COVID that took place in 2021, when obviously England did really well, and being like, right, if I get through this treatment and get back, I'm going to go into sport because it's what I've always wanted to do. So it was kind of Gareth Southgate in that England team and just loving that summer of seeing England do so well that motivated me to go, yeah, I'm going to give it a go.
I obviously read beforehand that you got diagnosed with cancer. How did you kind of battle that? Obviously, you were kind of making your way up. You were kind of climbing the ladder in a sense to kind of get the career you wanted, and you got hit with a massive roadblock in the way to pick yourself back up and carry on pursuing that career. How hard was that?
I think actually it was probably made things a lot easier for me because I dealt with so many difficult times of like going into scans and not knowing whether it was going to be the worst news possible and getting calls. And I had so many ups and downs during my treatment that nothing scares me now. And since coming back, there's things like I would have got nervous before walking into like a room of people I didn't know, or having to stand up in front of a load of people and giving speeches. Like I've had to do that a lot over the last few years, or even going live on air. I used to get nervous about that. And I'm always like, nothing is quite scary as it was before because I've been through far worse. So I think it's probably made me a far more confident person. And I try my best not to kind of get stressed and worry about things like I did. Like I'm very much a perfectionist. And even if underneath it all, I know that like a shift has gone well, I'll always look at the tiny details of when it didn't. And I try to stop myself from doing that because I think most of these things don't really matter. Everyone makes mistakes.
So you're a freelancer yourself. How did you know that's what you wanted to do? Because for me as a student, looking at a freelancer, I feel like any student wants to go into a job which is obviously guaranteed money and work, and freelancer isn't guaranteed at all, really. And what I'd like to know is when you got into the freelance job, like how did you, were there any struggles with that? Did you just embrace it and realize you might have a tough few months ahead to get your feet sort of settled before you can start having a heavier workload?
Yeah, I think definitely at the beginning, I would not have gone freelance. I think, like you just said, when I was starting out, I wanted to be in like a secure workplace where there was a clear like career progression and like people around me to support me and to learn from. And also for practical things like getting a mortgage and stuff, I wanted to make sure that I was in the best financial position. Whereas I'm 39 now and life's kind of moved on a bit. And the main reason I'm freelance is to have the flexibility around my children, because I don't want to be contracted to work every weekend. Like I work some weekends when a really good opportunity comes up, but I don't want my kids to be in school all week and then I'm away Saturday and Sunday covering football and I can't see them. So I'm very lucky that the majority of my work is Monday to Friday. And I've had to work really hard to seek that out, especially in the sports world, but I'm lucky I've managed to. So I kind of want to be able to take a bit of extra time off from the school holidays. I want to be there. Like tomorrow, they finish at 1:30 for the school holidays. And if I was in the BBC offices in London, I'm not going to be able to pick them up. Whereas I've managed to find quite a lot of remote work that I can do. So it's purely a lifestyle choice. And I think the other thing is because I've worked in newspapers, radio, and I've doing some TV now, I get a really good balance and variety, which I really like. I absolutely love writing features, but I also really like covering live sport. I like doing interviews. I like being creative, editing audio. And if I was doing one job, I don't think I'd have the chance to do all of that. So it keeps me really interested and passionate about my career. But it's a massive juggle and you have to make a lot of decisions about what you're going to go for, how much time to like leave free for when good stuff comes up. Like in July, I'm going to Switzerland probably for up to a month to cover the Euros. And I've then had to stand down all my other freelance work because that is such a good opportunity. Hopefully, because I've known people long enough, like it's not going to affect, I'll be able to go back to that stuff. But if you were kind of new, someone might say, oh, well, I'm not going to let her disappear off for a month. We're not going to give her shifts anymore.
So you mentioned how you love obviously radio, TV, and written tabloid. You like it all. What's a typical week for you then as a freelance sports journalist?
So I tend to do quite a lot of live match blogs, and some of that's remote and some of it's like in the stadium. So I cover the Women's Champions League. I'm going to be covering the Lionesses at the Euros as well. So it's kind of a mixture of in-stadium reporting, which involves doing like pre-match and post-match interviews as well, which are kind of shared among broadcasters. I do at the moment 2 days a week working for the Kent Football Association in a communications role, which involves writing articles and doing interviews for their website, working on their newsletters and a lot of their content. And that's brilliant because I really love the kind of grassroots element and the real like human stories you get out of that. So I really like the fact that like one night I'm at Arsenal and then the next morning I'm covering like some grassroots girls team like in my own town. I really like the variety of that. And then I do shifts at BBC Radio. So I work on a sports program, which is kind of sit down, long form interviews, which I really love, because you sort of research who you're going to interview, plan out how it's going to go, but you never know what answers they're going to give. So the interview will go in a completely different way to what you think. And I love at the end that you could be creative and kind of weave bits of commentary into it, weave like some music into it, get some kind of background noise, take them out on a walk. There's so many different things you can do. So I really like that. And then on the writing side, I pitch stories to different magazines. Like When Saturday Comes, I've written for, Fansided, goalkeeper.com. There's a few different places which, when I've got the capacity around other work, I will put ideas forward.
So, as a freelancer, would you say your people skills and communications is like the most important part of your job? Because without being someone who people want to kind of talk to and give their work to, you don't really have a career. So, yeah, what I'm trying to say is, do you think your people skills is like your most important skill?
Yeah, I think it's really important. I think being reliable and always giving your all, because the thing with freelance work is, if you have a bad shift, you might not get invited back the next week. It's very different to like in a contracted job where, you know, you might have a bad week, but you know, like you're in there and you might get given different work to do, but you've still got a job. So you always have to deliver every time you do a freelance shift. It can be a lot harder work, because I've been in other jobs, like at the BBC before, where if you didn't manage to finish something in a day, it's fine, because you can come in the next day and pick it up if it wasn't on deadline. Whereas for me, if I've got a piece to do, I'm getting paid a set rate to deliver the product, and I have to work really hard to get that done. So for me, definitely since coming back and being freelance, networking has been extremely important. And there've been certain conversations that I've never known would like lead to what they have. Like a couple of my different freelance jobs were literally just going up and talking to someone at an event, introducing myself, saying I was really interested, and then keeping in touch with them, all kind of badgering people in the newsroom. To, you know, say, I'm really keen, I really want to do this. Like the sports program that I work on, initially they didn't have the capacity for freelancers, but I kept saying, I'm really keen to work on this program. And then there was one day when an interview needed to be done and there was no one to do it. And they said, oh, Faye, do you want to do it? And I was like, yep, absolutely. Put 110% into it. And then they liked it. And then the next day I was like, how about this idea? And before I knew it, I was doing it every week. And it's just little things like that, where as a freelancer, you have to make your own opportunities, because no one else is looking out for your career apart from you. They're just kind of getting on with their job, and people aren't always going to notice unless you put yourself out there and basically say that you're keen.
So would you say your contact book is your biggest asset? And to join on with that, how do you maximize your contact book as a freelancer?
Um, I'd say it was when I was like starting out, but I'm actually at a stage now where I haven't looked for any new work probably for like a year, because I'm really happy with the balance. And I actually have to stop myself from looking, because I'm like, opportunities might come up and things like, I really want to go to the Euro, so I'm not going to take on anything else between now and like August, because I've set that time aside and I'm really dedicated to that. So I'm actually really happy with like the roles I've got. But definitely the more people you know, the better, because I think if you're sending emails in, sending pictures in, editors have so many different people contacting them, that if they can remember a conversation with you, or they remember your face, or they remember you making them laugh in an email, that's going to make you stand out.
So what advice would you give to, I'd say, the new wave of journalists who want to pursue a career in the industry? Maybe both as a freelance and as someone who does want a stable job as well.
I would say when you've like got the time and opportunity, just go and get as much like unpaid experience as you can. So when I was like in sort of sick form and at uni, I spent all like my university holidays and weekends volunteering at events. And I used to row for my uni. So any kind of world rowing, European rowing thing, I'd be there helping to run the media operations of it. So it meant that you were there with the journalists, getting to know what they were doing. I did like the London Marathon. I worked at Wimbledon. Lots of triathlon events I used to do. So it was kind of anything where I thought I'd love to be at this event and have a ticket. I'm not going to pay for a ticket. I'm going to volunteer, and then I'm actually there in the event. And things like, I remember being at the end of the World Triathlon Series, and I was literally on the finish line next to the Brownlee brothers, and you're like, this is absolutely brilliant. There's all those people up there in the stand paying to watch this, and I'm here like holding the photographers back and making sure they're not getting in, too close to the athletes. So there's so many amazing things you can do, and I think you learn from all of those. And I just say, basically put yourself out there, talk to people. Like, I remember I was working at Wimbledon, and me and my friends used to work in the gift shop every summer. It was absolutely brilliant, so much fun. And I just graduated from Southampton, and I'd won like a sports journalist award that usually John Inverdale, the TV presenter, would come and present. Because he used to go to Southampton. He hadn't come that year to the ceremony. So I just dropped an email, having a guest, going john.inverdale@bbc.co.uk, and just said, oh, hi, John, I won your award. I'm at Wimbledon. Just wondered if there's any chances of work experience. And within like half an hour, he's got back and go, are you around tonight? And I was up on the roof filming Today at Wimbledon with like John Inverdale, and Venus Williams was up there, and all these amazing people. And met loads of BBC journalists working for 5 Live, and like John Inverdale was fantastic in like showing me how he wrote his own cues. I learned so much on that day, and he actually was one of the ones who said to me, go and do a few years in news before you go into sport. So all those people you can meet along the way then like become contacts, and you might never speak to them again, but I think you learn something from every conversation.
So my next question is, as a maybe a freelance, where do you go? Because you talk about putting yourself out there, but to find these jobs, do you have any advice for where someone would want to look for jobs? Any like websites, any sort of I can't think of the word, but yeah, any websites, any like forums where like jobs kind of circulate, and as a freelance or as a student as well, be the best place to kind of go and obtain some work experience?
Yeah, definitely. Like, for paid work at the moment, one of the best ones I'd recommend is something called Freelance Football Opportunities. It's a really small monthly fee, like a few pounds, and someone does all the hard work of trawling like LinkedIn and Twitter and finding all these opportunities. So each week the newsletter comes out and has loads of opportunities in it. And I got one of my now regular gigs with UEFA through that. I will be honest that I applied for absolutely loads of stuff otherwise that perhaps didn't come to anything. But I think sometimes you've got to have confidence in yourself and keep going. And there's times that I've pitched ideas that I thought, this is a really brilliant idea. I think this would work really well for this magazine. And then you just don't hear back at all, or you chase it up and they go, oh, we're not really looking for anything at the moment. So you've got to have quite a like tough skin, hard skin, to know that it's not all going to be plain sailing. You're going to get knocked back. But I'd say there's quite a few different people on Twitter. There's one called Media Mentor, I think it's called, that shares kind of news and sport opportunities. There's a guy called Gary Taphouse, who's a brilliant football commentator, and most of his feed is sharing work. So when I was looking for work, I kind of kept an eye on all of those things, and you kind of know that you've got to apply for 10 things before maybe one of them will come off. BBC Local Radio, like, I started my BBC career at BBC Essex, and there's some great opportunities to start off working on the Saturday sports show, whether it's helping to produce in the studio, which is absolutely mad, with like 6 different commentaries coming through speakers and you're working out which ones to go to, or going out reporting on non-league football. It's all absolutely brilliant experience. And even though I think a lot of people going into it imagine themselves working in the Premier League or the WSL or the internationals, you're still doing the same job down at non-league level. And actually, I'd say it's harder work. Like the non-league football I've covered, I've had to like wait outside the tunnel for the players to have their showers and come out to speak to me and try and grab someone and convince them to do the interview. Whereas like working for UEFA, the players are all sent to me after the game, and I just kind of stand there with the camera crew, and it's really smooth. So I think the more breadth of experience you can get will just make you a better journalist and kind of more confident in dealing with different situations.
So what final question, what are a few of your top tips for students like me who want to succeed in the industry then?
So definitely, as I said before, just get as much unpaid experience as you can. Like, if you've got the capacity around what you're doing, whether it's a job or studies, see how much time you can spend. I'd say if you want to go into sport, the best way to do it is be out there actually getting the experience reporting. So if you're interested in football, non-league football clubs, I volunteered for my non-league football club for a couple of years, writing articles to help them with the social media, and it was really, really good experience. And you might think, oh, there's only like 100 people reading my work, but that's all a way for you to build up your writing technique. I'd say just read as much as you can. Like working in sport, you've got to keep on top of everything that's happening. So just absolutely like indulge in reading so many different styles. So read magazines. I listen to about 6 different football podcasts every week. When they come out, I'll be like, oh, you know, if I'm going on a walk or I'm doing my exercises or something, I'll make sure I'm keeping on top of those. So yeah, reading, keeping up to date with everything. Because what you don't want to be doing is covering a match and you're unaware of the significance of something that happens in that match. You've got to be completely on top of it. And I just say, like, pursue your dreams. Like working in journalism, there's never been a day where I've thought I don't want to go to work, or even that this feels like work. Like I remember quite early on in my career covering the Ryder Cup when it was in Newport, and I was working on the newspaper there. And I got given something called the Royal Rota, where they choose a couple of journalists to follow a member of the royal family around. And it was King Charles, although back then he was Prince Charles. And I was stood on the balcony, and there were the captains of the team. So it was Corey Pavin and Colin Montgomery, Prince Charles, me and a photographer, and then like hundreds of people below. And I was there as this like 21-year-old journalist thinking, my career is never going to get better than this. And we literally stood in conversation, and like Prince Charles, King Charles, and like the golfers were like chatting to me. And I was thinking, wow, like this is a brilliant career. So I think for any hard days, you're always going to get some brilliant opportunities. It is really, really hard work. And I remember like when I first started covering football, I do absolutely loads and loads of preparation. And you might have all these pages of notes that you don't end up using, but it's all useful to have done that, and it all sticks in your mind. So yeah, if you love it, it won't feel like work.
Great. Thanks for your insight, Faye. It's really good to hear from a freelancer, someone who, I mean, you hear a lot of people who go through quite an ordinary route going up through the ladder, but you've had a very unique journey in terms of what you fought in your personal life and then becoming to a freelancer. So thanks for your insight, and I think it's definitely valuable for me already. I feel like I've learnt a lot, and it'd be valuable for anyone who can hear this interview.
Brilliant, thanks.